Dear participants, thank you very much for the invitation. And my first word is to commend the Conselho da Diáspora for organizing this new edition of the Euro-African Forum. The Euro-African Forum is already a very useful, regular platform of interaction between the two continents, and it is very important that it can be hosted in Portugal, showing how Portugal can be and is important in playing a role of mediation between the two continents. I also want to commend for the very accurate motto you chose, new paths for cooperation between twin continents. And I would like to first to underscore the three elements contained in this motto, and then to refer very briefly to the role Portugal is playing in the relationship between the two continents. First, what I call the three main elements of this motto. Yes, Europe and Africa are twin continents. José Manuel Durão Barroso has already shown how important it is to consider the proximity, even the complicity between the two continents. From my side, I would also add the sense of complementarity between Africa and Europe. If you look to the demographics, if you look to the economy, if you look to the human resources, if you look to the capital and the power of investing, if you look at the institutional frameworks, it's very easy to see this complementarity. What is lacking in one continent, the other continent has and can provide. Africa can provide us, if we think in terms of, for instance, the demographic winter that we are experiencing already in many European countries, we can provide to Africa the institutional stability, the models for organization, and also the capital, the investment, and the skills they need. So this complementarity, along with the proximity, defines the fact that we can and we must call these continents twin continents. Then in need of reciprocal cooperation, in need of an interaction that can be mutually beneficial and can be productive, because the results that you can get from this cooperation are very useful for both parties. And this cooperation is very clearly defined by the Abidjan Summit Declaration as a partnership between equals. And it is very, very important to always keep in your mind this commitment of the leaders of both continents to this idea of equality and partnership between equals. It is a common agenda for two continents and to their sub-regions that is of the interest of both continents, and that is implemented taking into account all the rights, the projects, the needs, and also the wills of both continents. This cooperation, this partnership between equals, has its own agenda. The agenda was also designed in the Abidjan Summit 4 years ago. And we are preparing both the assessment of the implementation of this agenda until now, and the preparation of the new agenda the leaders are expected to approve next February in the new edition of the Euro-African Summit. That's why the Ministers of Foreign Affairs will meet next Tuesday in Kigali, capital of Rwanda, in order to prepare carefully and prepare in a very dense and concrete way the next summit between the two continents. Cooperation means also the idea that it is not anymore a relation of patronage of Europe towards Africa, even if this patronage could be equated as donation. Of course, the aid for development is still very important. Of course, the humanitarian aid is still very important, but it has to be an element of a more comprehensive approach in which you need more trade, more investment, more cooperation in education, in the power of youngsters or women, and the exchange of the institutions and of the institutional approaches. So cooperation is the second core element, and I think the motto chosen for this forum is very accurate in highlighting the importance of this element. And finally, new paths for cooperation. We need not to repeat the usual way of doing things. We do need any more business as usual. We need to open new avenues for our mutual cooperation. And very concrete and promising, by the way, avenues. For instance, is of course following or at least taking the European model as a source of inspiration that the Africans have decided 2 years ago to launch their own free trade continental area agreement. This is very promising. The Africans are now launching this idea of a continental free trade area. And of course, one of its sources of inspiration, I personally think that it is the most important source of inspiration, is the European internal market ideal. But if the Africans are organizing, are launching this continental free trade area, we, the Europeans, we have to work with them on that basis. Not only on the bilateral relations, not only in the traditional trade terms, but also taking into consideration that we are now pursuing a way in which we shall have in the future two economic blocks with a continental configuration. So new ways of making trade. New ways of investing. It is very, very important, not only in Africa, but also in Europe, but mainly in Africa, to make it clear that the green transition and the digital transition are not a threat for jobs, for people, for livelihoods. That digital and green transition are the very new opportunity for economic growth and for the job creation. That was why the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union, together with the European Investment Bank, I can see the Vice President here, launched last April in Lisbon what we call the Euro-Africa Forum for Green Investment and for green growth. And the margins of that forum, contracts of EIB funding of several African countries amount to the value of 350 million euros in order to fund economic projects in Africa with environmental spillovers. So this is a very important second new path of cooperation between the two continents. Investing in order to improve, to boost the green transition and the digital transition, taking this transition as the new opportunity, the real opportunity right now to foster the economic growth and the job creation. A third path is, of course, the need to consider in a comprehensive way the issues of health, of public health as essential, existential for both countries, for both continents, sorry. Because COVID-19 has shown us, and I will not reiterate Barroso's arguments, how existential is this threat for all the world, but with a specific dimension in Africa. So we have to consider the theme of public health as a very important line of cooperation and a common challenge that we have to address together. It's another way, in my view, a more comprehensive way of seeing, of conceiving the crucial theme of sustainability. Sustainability does not mean only the issue of environmentalism and the need to preserve the biodiversity and to combat climate change, but also has this key element that has to do with the physical existence of people and communities, and we have to address together the next challenges we have to face in terms of human security and public health. And we need, I think, also new ways of thinking traditional elements of our cooperation, including traditionally difficult elements of our cooperation. For instance, take the human rights issue, which is so important from the European point of view and increasingly important from the point of view of Africa. We have to see this issue as we must see it both theoretically and practically. Human rights are interdependent. We need a holistic approach. For instance, take Egypt. Egypt has to guarantee every year that at least 1 million children initiate their schooling. And Egypt needs now to create annually almost 1 million jobs to guarantee the job to the people that are arriving to the labor market. This is also a human rights issue. And perhaps when speaking with our Egyptian friends, we have to start from this, from recognizing how important for them and how difficult for them is to fulfill, not only recognize, but fulfill these basic human rights. And perhaps in doing so, you can more easily speak with them on issues like, for instance, elimination of death penalty or things related to the media, freedom of media. I'm not devaluating these elements. I'm just suggesting that if we have a comprehensive approach to these issues, it's better to speak to each other productively on all these issues. And same goes for migrations. We have, at the European level, right now, already 8 action plans with 8 different countries, some of them African countries, in which we treat the migration issue not as the issue, but as one dimension of a comprehensive approach. You speak of trade and investment, you speak of humanitarian aid, you speak of security, you speak of training for purpose, for instance, of border control, and you speak also of mobility. And in speaking of mobility, you speak of regular, safe, orderly mobility, for instance, of workers, and you speak of the difficult issue of readmissions, irregular migration, the need to combat trafficking together. So, new paths for cooperation. I think it is very, very well highlighted by the motto of this forum. And I think Portugal can play a specific role, and I would dare to say a very, very important role. We are already playing it, for instance, in terms of vaccination. We are working with African countries in terms of vaccination in 3 different and complementary plans. First of all, the bilateral plan, the cooperation with our main partners in Africa, that is the Portuguese-speaking countries in Africa. So we launched it with them, a specific bilateral program of cooperation, first for training health professionals and to provide help in tests, test assessment, and so on, and now by providing vaccines. We are also, second level, expanding this program in order to consider also non-Portuguese speaking Africans in Africa. Last Monday, the first donation of doses to an African country that it is not Portuguese speaking, that is to Senegal, was delivered. And we already reached the mark of 1.5 million vaccines donated bilaterally by Portugal to Africa, to African countries by these means. But we participate, of course, in the COVAX mechanism, and in terms of the European Union, we are also participating not only in donation of vaccines, but also and mainly in providing the conditions for the manufacturing of vaccines in African facilities. So we can play a role. But we also play a role in terms of the mutual understanding that we need between Europeans and Africans. It was with no surprise that I personally saw during the Guterres campaign to the position of Secretary General of the United Nations, the unanimous support of African countries. The unanimous support of African countries. It was not a surprise for me, because the level of mutual understanding between a country like Portugal and many, if not all, African countries is very high. But we have to transform this capacity into concrete action, into concrete deliverables. So I think this forum is really important because it provides a platform not only to speak to each other, it is very, very important to speak with each other, but also to draw some lessons of what we are doing and to find out the appropriate methodologies. And my last example, to be concrete, continue to be concrete, is the Mozambique example. Mozambique is facing a very, very dire threat situation in Cabo Delgado. They asked for the European support and they asked for the bilateral support of Portugal. And we launched it last spring, at the end of, beginning of March, a military mission, a Portuguese military mission in Mozambique in order to train the special forces of Mozambique. And we are doing this work. But at the same time, taking profit of the fact that we were the rotating presidency of the European Union and with the full support of the High Representative, we also put in place a European training mission to Mozambique. So we are there. We are there not only because we cooperate with them, but also because it is our basic security interest to help them in impeding the spread of the terrorist networks. But this is not enough. And it was very, very important that the regional partners, the neighboring countries of Mozambique, also took full responsibility in helping the country. And now we have a Rwanda military contingent there, and you have combat troops that are there helping the Mozambicans in the framework of the community of Austral African countries, the SADC. So I think we need all these circles. The neighbor, the proximity, we need it the neighborhood, we need it. The regional, the national, and then the regional appropriation and no ownership is needed. But we also need this interaction between the two continents, not only if you speak of economy, trades, and investment, but also if you think virtually of all the dimensions in which we have to cooperate to ensure that we fully understand that we live in only one planet and we have to preserve this planet because there is no planet B. Thank you.